Welcome back to the Fabricators Podcast. On this edition of our podcast, we are going to be joined by Kevin Waldmann. Kevin Waldmann came to SecturaSOFT from another organization that focuses on automation and movement of material, which is a perfect timing to join in at SecturaSOFT with all of the current fabricators, laser manufacturers, and job shops moving to automated load and unload systems. He's a great individual to have on board, and we're really excited to have him on the Fabricators Podcast. Let's dive in. All right, guys. So welcome back to the Fabricators Podcast. This time we have Kevin Waldmann with us. Kevin Waldmann is the sales manager for SecturaFab. He's with a coworker of mine who came from the automation industry, came outside of the industry, and I thought he would be a great guest here this week to discuss the differences that he sees in this industry versus the industry that he was in previously, to talk a little bit about automation in the fabrication industry, and to just explain what he sees as changes in automation, and maybe even a little bit about how COVID has affected automation. You know, a lot more people are having skeleton crews inside of their fabrication shops, and maybe they want to have some remote automation going on, so that they can do things like sheet loads, sheet unloads, moving from press brake to press brake, and doing more with less individuals on the shop floor, and also having more individuals working from home, and how that you may want to monitor some of these automated tools. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us here on the Fabricators Podcast. I thought maybe we could kick things off. Can you give us a little bit of background about where you were before SecturaSOFT? And also give us a little bit about your role at the other organization and when you transitioned and made this move over to SecturaSOFT.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me, by the way. So I came from a background of factory automation. I worked for a company called Fastems. What we did was we created pallet handling systems for mostly machine shops, bigger machine shops. But yeah, so we created pallet handling systems. My duties there were, it was kind of spread wide there. I was a manager of the parts department. So I oversaw all of the parts sales, parts shipment, all of the logistics of everything. I also had smaller duties such as, logistics of, trade shows, getting our demos to trade shows and things like that. I also did some customer service as well. So if, a customer had a machine go down or something like that, I would be able to assist them with that. But yeah, so that was when I started there, that was kind of my introduction to the automation industry. I learned a lot being there. I learned a lot about not only the automation industry, but also fabrication industry as well. So it was nice to have a good starting point that kind of helped me with my career. And like I said, I learned quite a bit. So yeah, I joined SecturaSOFT back in May of this year. Got on board. Brad helped me out a lot, and I've had quite a bit of fun and learned quite a bit already. So
very cool. Yeah. Well, and I know that you were talking about like the palletized handling and different handling of, I guess, is it kind of like material movement? Is that mostly what Fastems focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was material movement. We had material pallets full of different items that we move from location to location or from machine to a certain location. And that's what we specialized in. So.
Yeah, very cool. And so when we take a look at the industry that we're in now, the fabrication industry, what do you see as some things that carry over? Obviously, what we're seeing much more than I've ever seen in this industry is more automation. So when I first started, you may have some suction cups that move some materials. There was, I know, this old thing called a river system that Mitsubishi started off with, and basically what it was, a load and unloader for different material. But now I'm seeing much faster load and unload because of these fiber lasers that are coming into play, where they're moving material much, much faster. When you look at Fastems and the changeover to this industry, was there a time that you remember at Fastems that changeover happened, or what was the biggest focus? Was it to move material as quick as possible, as accurate as possible? What was kind of the outcome of the material movement inside of Fastems? Because it was much more in the automotive space and things like that, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was much more accurate, much more efficient than a lot of the job shops that we're going into now. But it seems like the job shops are catching up. So I guess what was the goal of a lot of the customers from Fastems when they would install these systems?
Like you said, the main goal was to be as efficient and as quick as possible. So you were correct. We did automotive, a lot of aerospace. That was, I would say, our majority of our customers were aerospace oriented companies. So, it was the main goal was to get their items as quickly from their location to the machine, get it cut and bring it back to a certain location or bring it back to a different machine, and that was the main goal. So
okay. And what were some of the hurdles that you saw customers have when they implement these systems? So if you were sitting here as these fabricators, so in that industry, it seems like those guys have had a lot of experience with these automated systems. So they knew what to watch out for. They knew what to expect, long implementation cycles or what types of material to look for or what type of machines to look for. As fabricators start growing and they start going into this material handling, so a lot more customers now are looking at material handling than ever before because of these fast machines, because of these skeleton crews. So what type of gotchas do you think that they need to look out for? And what would you recommend for these guys as they're going and looking at material handling, load, unload type platforms?
The main thing I would say is kind of just to try to do your research before you invest. There were a lot of customers that we had that had invested quite a bit of time and money into these systems, but didn't really take the time to learn them. And what that caused is, although it is supposed to be an automated system, there's obviously going to be some sort of, man-operated aspects to it. And they only had certain people that could do that. And if those people were out, then, they were kind of left high and dry. So I would say the main, gotcha would be to inform yourself, to do some research, and to kind of be able to have a variety of people that are able to use your system that you have. So
yeah, and that's the same thing that me and you experience today, right? Is where we go in and somebody buys our solution and they don't want to put the time to implement it correctly, but they want correct outcomes. So basically what you're saying is make sure that you educate yourself, making sure that you educate others inside of your organization so that your outgoing expense actually means something, and you have some gains from it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Now, when you were there at Fastems, in the automation side of things, and now you're transitioning over to this side of things, is there a big difference that you see, or do you see, where Fastems was, or where their customers were 10 years ago? Is that where you're kind of feeling that our customers are now, where they're making that transition into more automation, and you kind of see the same pain points?
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I'm seeing. So a lot of the companies, a lot of the bigger companies that we sold to, they had a pretty good foundation. They were up and running pretty well by the time that they invested into a pallet handling or automation system. But a lot of the shops started very small. They started as small job shops or machine shops, and they've grown, gathered enough capital to invest into something like this. And I've kind of noticed that with, a lot of our customers. It's kind of our software. I think what it does is it takes you the next step up. So, any sort of automation that you can do is going to make your process a little bit more efficient. It's going to make it a little bit quicker. It's going to require less people. So it's going to in turn save you money while making you more money. And I think that that's exactly how the majority of our customers over at Fastems, how they started off as well. So.
Yeah, very cool. And then outside of Fastems, now that you've made the transition over into the fabrication sector, obviously you were in the fabrication sector before, but you're working more on the logistics, how to move material around the shop. And now you're dealing with people inside of the shop. When it comes to, not to just kind of keep harping on this whole COVID pandemic, we keep talking about it every time that we have a conversation, but around this whole situation, what do you see? Do you see with this automation, more people wanting to work remotely, more automation coming in? You know, if you had a crystal ball and you were looking forward, what do you foresee? Because one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on board was because of your experience in this automation sector, because you were already ahead of where most of the fabricators were today that we're working with. And so we really think that bringing you in and bringing in your knowledge is going to help us set up for the future. So as we move forward and you see more automation, I keep hearing people saying that this fabrication side of things just kind of, or this whole COVID thing for the fabrication just kind of kickstarted them into the more automated sector. So with all that being said, you know, as you look forward, what do you see that is going to be a change inside of the fabrication space? And what kind of recommendations do you have for customers as they move forward through this pandemic and just kind of as we make this digital change inside of the fabrication sector?
Well, I think that this pandemic, although obviously a very negative thing, was kind of an eye-opener to a lot of people. They realized that, you know, in the case of something like this, which is obviously a possibility, they should have the ability to work remotely, you know, be able to automate some of their processes so that they don't have to have people, they don't have to have staff there constantly. And I think that this year is going to develop a much higher need for automation in quite a few companies. So I think that, you know, the ability to run not only a skeleton crew, but also lights out, if they could run, you know, almost 24/7, obviously there's going to be some cases where that's not a possibility, but if that is, that's going to, it's worth the investment. And I think that not only is it worth the investment for safety, for the safety aspect, but also for the ability to get more work done in a 24-hour span. So I think advice-wise, I would say that although automation might seem frightening to some people that, you know, have worked as an estimator or something like that for 30 years, you know, if that's what they've done their whole life, they may see it as a threat to their career. But in reality, it's really not. It's something that can help them. It's going to make their life a little bit easier, and it's going to in turn make, you know, the company more money. So I would advise personally to try to automate as much as you can, and to try to, you know, like I've said before, make your company as efficient as possible. So you know, automating some of your processes and still having staff on board to, you know, check those processes and things like that. That's good to have, but to be able to automate it, it would, you know, it changes a company quite a bit. So.
Yeah, I remember, you know, when I was growing up, my dad would always talk about like the horse and buggy and the guys that had like the leather straps on the horse and buggy. And as that transitioned over to a car, right, those are the same guys that were wrapping the steering wheel in the leather.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
you know, there's always going to be a role. It's just how fast
Exactly.
do you want to go? Do you want to be a horse and buggy, or do you want to be in a Ferrari going down the street, right? So I think it's,
right.
you'd much rather be efficient and moving forward with the time. Don't be resistant. And figure out your path as you go along. So I think that's great insight. I have, you know, one final question for you. I've heard you kind of use the term, you know, feeding the beast when it comes to, you know, these cutting systems. So fiber lasers, how fast they are, and how you got to get material there. What exactly do you mean? Because that's something that you kind of talk to our customers a lot about is how to be as efficient as possible upfront. To get more on the back end to your machine. So are you seeing more downtime on machines, or because these machines are becoming faster, you're seeing more downtime on them because it's taking so long up front? Is that kind of what you're talking about there? I've heard you say this a few times, so I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. No,
Where are
that's,
you seeing the bottlenecks, I guess, is the best point the question I have for you.
yeah. Honestly, it's kind of a butterfly effect in a way. So right from the get-go, I mean, you have a customer that, you know, says they need a quote on an item, and it takes you 3 to 5 days, if not more, to make that quote. That's a tremendous amount of downtime starting right there. And that's just going to keep going. You know, that 3 to 5 days that it takes you is just going to keep going as the process proceeds. So You finally get the quote over to them. They take some time to look over the quote. They finally say, yeah, we'd like to order that. Then you're going to have to go in and make that order and remake that item in a like a production ready standpoint. And then you're going to have to create that item, ship it out, all of that. That can all be simplified. So with the software similar to our software, you could get that quote out in 20 minutes, if not less. Get that quote over same day. We'll just say that. Those people could come back. That customer could come back same day, say they want to order it. And you could start making that item that day. So there is a tremendous amount of downtime that I've been seeing. And like you said, feeding the beast, that is something that I've said. And you need to constantly be able to have orders going to that laser or to that punch, whatever it may be. You need to have orders going, and you need to have those machines running constantly. That downtime that it takes to create quotes or to create orders is going to create downtime for your machines, and in turn is going to keep you from making the most amount of money that you could.
And the same thing probably then too with material, right? So if you have material that's just sitting there, how do you automate unloading that? And then how do you automate material going to that machine as well, right? So feeding the beast with work, but feeding the beast with material so it can be cut, and feeding the press brake and keeping these machines on is probably what everybody should be looking at.
Exactly, yeah.
How you can cut down on any bottleneck that's restricting that. No, very good. Well, Kevin, it was great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time here today. Anything else that you want to add, or?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit. I think it's been pretty good. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you all so much for joining us on the Fabricators Podcast. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.